Okay, everybody, I'm putting together a video on Kivy to try and get you kick-started. I can't cover everything in a short video because it's actually an extensive language, but I can get you started, and this was the intent of the incursion. So if you have an opportunity to make it to incursions in future, we'll work a little bit on Kivy each time to get you doing a new aspect. Um, if you work through the tutorials on the kivy.org website and you work through the videos and you ask me questions, you will be fine. You're not expected to be able to just create a fantastic, beautiful, colorful, UX perfect app straight away. We're taking baby steps. So if you can get the clock app, which is your next assessment task, on a screen and displaying, that's all that's really expected of you at this point. And if you then have time to extend yourself and try and make it pretty as well, then that's a benefit to you, because when we get to the major project next year, you will have to do that kind of thing. Okay, so don't be too hard on yourselves. This stuff is hard. Okay, what is Kivy? It's a library. We don't call it libraries in Python, we call them modules, but it's just this file full of code. That's all it is. There's code that's already been written by the developers at Kivy, and it allows Python to display a user interface. There are a couple of different user interface libraries for Python. There are a whole lot of reasons I chose to use Kivy. Some of those reasons kind of disappeared when Python went to Python 3 from Python 2.7, but if you want to, I can have a discussion with you about why we went with Kivy, but that's outside of the scope of this talk. Okay, so you need to be able to do a user interface in order to complete the requirements of the software design syllabus, and this is the chosen user interface that we're going to go through, and so you kind of have to just jump on board. It uses predefined objects. These are mostly called widgets, but there are different widgets that do different things, and you can manipulate those objects. Generally, you just change their attributes, you just change how they look, but sometimes you can add code to them or initialize them a certain way. I do not expect you to be doing initialization of widgets right now, but you can. It is possible. You can rewrite the entire thing if you want to, but that would take you a very long time. It has its own structured grammar, so I recommend using the KV language to lay out your design of your screens to keep it separate from the functionality. Now you can choose to do Python and add buttons manually and try and keep track of the widget tree, but I've helped other students through the tangled mess that they make when they do that, and it can be very time consuming and very frustrating. So one of the reasons we chose to go with Kivy is because of this lovely, very easy to follow layout structure of the language that I think is really beneficial. So give it a go, please. It also has a really, really good library of documentation. However, the library of documentation is aimed at developers who are not brand new at this stuff. So some of it is pretty difficult to read and comprehend when you do read it. I think it's still valuable. So I would recommend you keep trying to read it, and it will start to make sense over time. And if you get to a page and you've read it and you still don't know what the heck it's talking about, then drop me an email and say, please tell me what this means in layman's terms, and I'll decode it for you. But if you haven't had a go at reading it first, then you're not going to learn how to read it next time, if that makes any sense. Okay, that's the overview of Kivy. What the heck is a root widget? Okay, So I've got a piece of code here. This is the Kv code. Make it red. Knew that would happen. Okay, trying again. Right, so this is the Kv language. And this line here says I have a widget that I'm defining as called coin toss box layout. And I've been very good with my naming convention here, and you can tell that that is a box layout widget, which has its own page in kivy.org to explain what it does, but it does do laying out on the screen. Doing layout manually is really hard, keeping track of numbers of where things need to be placed, and also managing the placement of widgets on the screen when people's screen sizes change, when they go from desktop to app, when they go from tablet to phone. These things are really hard, and Kivy does a whole lot of that work for you. So if you went through the Simple Paint app, it doesn't use layouts, but it's just kind of getting you started. I recommend from now on you look out for your layouts. There are a bunch of them. Box layout is, I think, the most useful. There's also a grid layout, there's a float layout, there's an anchor layout, there's a bunch of them. And so the way the layouts work is for a box layout that has an orientation of vertical, it splits your screen vertically, and depending on the number of things inside it, and here we have 3 things, we have label, we have another box layout, and we have label, that splits it into 3 equal size sections. And you can actually manipulate the sizing a bit, but by default it splits it 3 ways. Then inside that, this one here is another box layout, and its orientation is horizontal, and so it will put the 2 things, that one and that one, that I have inside that box layout side by side horizontally. So this is how this screen will end up looking. Now, this is the root widget, and you can see here that it is a parent that has 3 children. These are its children, and they are inside the coin toss box layout widget. And then these 2 children are inside the box layout widget. So that all comes under this parent widget. And this widget, you can't see my Python code just yet. You'll see it in a second. But this widget is the thing that is returned by the app. So the top widget that is returned by the app is the root widget. So when here, where my code references root, it's talking about coin toss box layout. Okay, that's probably one of the trickier things to keep track of, is when to use things like self and root. The first thing to do would be to try one or the other, but if you think of it as a tree, this is an upside down tree, clearly, that goes like that and has leaves, upside down tree, then the highest thing is the root, which is where the root of the tree would be. And you can also imagine it up the right way. But in my diagram here, the root is at the top. So it's the most fundamental widget. And so that's where all of your functions are defined. You don't define a function under a label. You don't define it under an unnamed box layout like this one that just says put something on the screen. But you do define functions under the root widget. So let's have a look at the 2 pieces of code side by side. Okay, so this doesn't fully work, but it does allow me to show you how these files work together. When you're using Kivy, you need this section. You need a class defined that is an app. And in order to reference an app is only a thing if you've imported the Kivy language for app. If you don't do the line that I just put the arrow against, then Python doesn't know what the heck an app is, doesn't know what you're talking about, and comes up with an error. If you do put it in properly with the import and the reference to the app, then you need to build that app, and that's this function here, def build self. So the build bit is a predetermined name. You don't need to think of the name. It's just going to be a build. Def, it just means I'm making a function. Self is making it self-aware, and this is probably one of the most difficult concepts in object-oriented programming. You're saying, I am a thing, and here I am, kind of. And then you return a defined widget called coin toss box layout. So when it sees that line, it goes, okay, what the heck is this coin toss box layout thing? Oh, look, it's defined up here. So there is a class coin toss box layout, and it is a box layout because I've referenced box layout here. I have to import it here from the Kivy library. I don't strictly need that line because I removed the code that did that. Okay, so then within my coin toss box layout, it knows how to lay out the coin toss box layout because of this here. Inside my KV file, it goes and finds coin toss box layout. Oh, this is that thing that she was talking about in the other file. All right, how do I lay that out? And that's when it comes up with that screen that we talked about in the last slide, where there are two buttons and there's some text. This text is here, this button is here, this one is here, and this label, which by default is empty, is here. And that's what it will look like. Okay, and then it has a function called choice. And choice takes in self to be self-aware, and it takes in a parameter called guess. Whatever gets sent through, it's just going to treat it with the name guess. That's all that parameter naming means. This is a variable name, you can call it whatever you like. So then within this function, I've set a string, an output variable to be a string which says you clicked the, and then joins in whatever the heck guess was, and then joins button, so that whole string, and then it sets, this is how I'm talking back to the screen from this function. So what it says is self here is the self-awareness, that's referring to this class coin toss box layout. It goes into the dictionary, the list of IDs that self has. It looks for the ID called result. So coming over here, searching down, I found an ID result. And then I set the text of that result, which is this here, to be output. So when I run this, it will say you clicked the whatever gets passed through here or here button. So it's actually telling me what I pressed on, which is really useful sometimes, but it's going to be useful as a framework for you to write your coin toss code, because you have to put all your functionality for coin toss in this function and this function alone, and it will allow you to update the screen. Once you've got that working, you can muck around with layouts or with colors or whatever. Let me show you what this looks like. Okay, so when I press heads, it passes, it does this bit. On release, I've just released the heads button, and it calls the function choice, which is in my root class, and it passes in the text heads. So over here, let me just erase some of our wonderful scribble, and I'll show you that again. Okay, so having a look at the screen, you'll notice that it is the way I drawed it. We have 3 sections top to bottom, and within the middle section we have 2 sections left to right. And what it does is it fills things to an equally divided portion. Okay, so when I press the heads button, this is what happens. It says, okay, on release of the heads button, sorry about that, change to purple. On release of the heads button, go and find the function choice in the root, which is coin toss box layout, so in the root class, and pass in the text. This is just text that says heads. So okay, over here we've found the root widget, we've found the choice function, we're calling the text that gets passed in guess, and then we make this string, you clicked the guess button. So when you click heads, it passes in the text heads, so this will be heads. It's really hard to write in PowerPoint. And then it does this update line. So it goes, and self here is actually coin toss box layout. From over here, because I'm halfway down the widget tree, I'm inside, let's draw the widget tree, there's coin toss box layout, there's label, there's box layout, there's label, so that's a label, that's a box layout, that's a label. Inside this box layout, it's a button and a button. Now, it's tricky for me to say my parent's parent, so handily I can just say root. But here, over here, I'm actually in the coin toss box layout, so my reference point is here, so I'm talking to myself. If I was talking to myself down here, I would just be talking to the button that called me, whereas, yeah, that's the difference between self and root, and I'm not saying that that's easy. Okay, so then we have gone and found the IDs. There's only one ID, so it's not a very difficult search. Finds the one called result, finds the text of that thing that has an ID of result, and changes it to be output. And that's how we trace it. And that's how, when I press this button, it goes to heads, and when I press this button, it changes to tails, and then back to heads, and then back to tails, and when I press tails, it doesn't change at all, and when I press heads, it doesn't change at all. It does actually change every single time. It's just that you can't see it because it's on top of it. Yeah. Okay, so now that's the quick overview of how these files work together, of the different languages, of how these Kivy files are laid out, of what you're expecting on the screen, of what a root widget is. That's a brief overview. Okay, the last thing I do need to say is that you'll notice that there are no loops anywhere. That's tricky to explain. There's kind of an infinite loop that runs until you press the exit button on a Kivy app. So when I run it, it keeps going. When I kill either terminal or kill the Kivy app, it closes. So that's an infinite loop. It's called event-driven programming. So it means that it's sitting there and waiting for events to happen. So it just sits there, and when something happens, like the screen is touched, it tries to work out, okay, were you over one of the widgets when the screen is touched? Is there something on that widget to say that I should do something when that is touched? And so that's how it works. And is the keyboard pressed? And was the X button clicked? All of that stuff is done automatically with Kivy. So that's really useful. And most things these days are event driven. Well, most things with user interfaces are event driven. So it's probably the most logical way for us to design these kinds of programs. If you were doing some really serious data analysis, or if you were trying to map the human genome, you wouldn't use event-driven programming. You would just start at the beginning and run it, and when it got to the end, finish. A different approach to different problems. Okay, now I'm going to do Newbie Kibby. What is the bare minimum of what we need to do to get Kivy working? Okay, so I have noob.kv and I have main.py. You can call your Python file whatever you like, but you can't call your KV file whatever you like unless you want to manually import it. If I want it to link automatically, I need the name of the KV file. The name of the KV file to be the same as the name of the app. So if I say I've got noob app, and that is an object of type app, then it will go and try and find noob.kv in the same folder as this Python file. So let's build this. We're making an app, and because we're using this keyword app, we need to import that because it is important that it comes from somewhere. Otherwise, Python's not going to know what the heck I'm talking about. So I go up to the top, oops, and I start typing from kivy.app import app. Whoops, keywords. Okay, so now I have told it what the heck an app is. I've said it's in the Kivy module under the app. And so it's importing that. And so I need a build function, otherwise nothing happens. And it needs to be self-aware. It's very unlikely that you'll have anything but self in a build function because I don't know where you'd be passing it from. So there are no parameters. So we have build self, and at the most fundamental level, we just want to return something. Let's return noob widget. Right. Okay. There's one part at the bottom that's in every single app. It's just a quick security check. I don't think it's necessary to understand exactly what's happening in that if statement, but just it's best if you just leave it there. So just put it in each file. Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to do things. And then I need to make sure that I've got the app that I'm running, which is called noob app, and it's an object, so I'm putting the brackets, and then I want to run it, which you see I haven't defined, but is already defined inside the Kivy language. So sometimes there are things that you don't ever have to write because Kivy has it already written for you. Okay, so now what the heck is this noob widget? Well, I haven't told it yet. So let's make it what kind of a thing is this? Well, the most straightforward thing, I think, is to put a box layout on the screen. So box layout. So if I'm referring to a box layout, I need to import it from Kivy. So from kivy.uix.boxlayout, import box layout. Okay, so I have this thing called new widget, and I have a box layout, and I can put in pass there. Now, pass is a cool keyword in Python. It means I know I haven't typed anything here, but ignore it. So if you're creating a new widget and you don't put anything here, Python will freak out at you. It will, I think, it will have an error message. Yeah, so it expected something indented here. And then it got to the next one and it's outdented, so it said, okay, you've made a mistake. I don't want it to do anything, but I don't want the error message either. So that's what pass does. It says, I'm okay, I know this isn't here, just ignore it for now. And it allows you to, well, first of all, to test all of your the layout stuff first without doing any of the coding, and it also allows you to do to have some widgets that are defined as having a style without needing any functionality. So if you have a particular screen design that has a background, you don't have to give it any functionality. It can just be. Okay, don't do screens yet. It's tricky and it's unnecessary for this first assignment. Okay, so I want to make this, I want to define the layout for my thing. So I need to tell it that that needs to have the same name as that. Okay, so we know that it's a box layout, which means that it's horizontal to start with. So let's leave it horizontal and put a button on the screen. Give the button text of click me, and then put a label on the screen and give the label text of not clicked yet. Right, so if I save that and then I run this, you have to make sure you save both files. Sometimes you will find that you've run your Python file and it hasn't updated with the new Kivy layout. It's just because you didn't save both of them. Okay, so that's the most basic form of layout. It's a box layout with two things on the screen. We can give this a little bit of functionality. Let me update the text to say it's been clicked after someone clicks, right? That's not very difficult functionality, but it does take some thinking. You have to think about how we're going to refer to this text box here. How are we going to update that text? Well, it needs an ID, otherwise it's really hard. So give it an ID. Make it clicked. Okay, and we need to make this happen when the button is clicked, right? So we're going to use the on release. and we're going to need to do something. So let's call a function. So we're going to be calling a function from Newbie Widget, which means we're going to have to use root. We haven't got a function yet, but I reckon it's just an update text. So I'm just going to call it update text. Be better than me. I've got a mix of case. Try and keep case standard. So camel case for variables means you leave lowercase, and every time there's a new word, you put an uppercase letter. So update text. I don't have to pass anything to it because it's just going to update once, and it will stay the same every time I click it after that. Okay, so I now need that function. That function needs to exist, otherwise it's going to freak out. So in here, instead of our pass, we're going to define a function. Define update text. It does have something passed automatically. It gets self-passed automatically because it's self-aware. Okay, so when I press this button, I want my clicked label to update to has been clicked or something like that. So I want to set self.IDs. The ID that I want is clicked. I'm changing the attribute text, and I'm going to change it to has been clicked. Right, save that, run this one. You have to run the Python one, you can't run the Kivy one. Okay, click me, has been clicked. And that's all the skills you need to know in order to do this assignment. You have to update the screen. We're going to do functions this week in the notes in Grok, and that will give you enough information to do the function stuff. You have to have done all of your documentation, which you practiced last term, so you have all the building blocks. I think from after this video you should be able to get started. Okay, drop me an email if you have any questions, or I might put a discussion board up. Okay, bye.